Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Witch Watch Season 1, Episode 3. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So the first episode gives us an somewhat proper introduction to Ibuki, Nico's mom, and obviously, like, her power, like her main power is seeing prophecies. And I'm wondering, is that book something unique to her? Like, I don't, it's such an interesting book. It's got like the teeth and everything, but basically it's like it tells you what page, what word, and basically you have to put all these words together, and it sends out, like, spells out a prophecy, and it's like dogs and rain. And so she's not quite sure what that means, but by part 2, she sends that warning to Morihito. But the first episode mainly revolves around Nico feeling like she's not getting Morihito's attention because she shows up in her outfit, that she sleeps in, and she's like, oh, like, shouldn't you comment on, like, how I should go change because I'm always in, like, my charming and cute and sexy outfit or whatever. And then he's just kind of like, wow, and he just kind of has no reaction, and that upsets her a lot because she wants at least some reaction. He's like, oh, you should go change. She's like, oh, you do kind of wear the same things all the time, don't you? And then she recognizes all her outfits. They might be different colors and they might be slightly different, but to an outsider's perspective, unless you have a really good eye, you're just going to think, oh, these all just look exactly the same. So she decides, like, I'm going to spruce up my outfit just to get Mori's attention, and she copies a design from the magazine, but the problem is the spell only, because it is a 2D picture, it's not a 3D model. I'm wondering, you could probably apply that spell to a mannequin, considering there is like a 3D outfit, but because it's just 2D, you only have the front and the back is transparent. And so her whole thing is, I'm gonna show off the outfit, but as long as I'm only showing the front to Morihito, it's fine. Because I was about to say, like, what are you gonna do about the back? But I was like, I guess, like, the whole plan was, like, you only wanted Mori to see it, so as long as you stay in the house, because it's the weekend anyway, so I guess you don't have to really worry about that. But our whole thing of just like, oh, look, I got this new outfit, and he's just like paying attention and be like, oh, let me go get some coffee. She's like, no, that's sexual harassment. He's like, what are you talking about? She's like, just stay there. And she kind of scoots around the room. I'd almost wondered if, I thought the gag was also going to be that she was going to be in front of, because she is in front of the TV. I thought, like, the reflection off the TV, or maybe she'd go over near the window and the reflection off the window would, you'd see, like, from, like, behind it, like, oh, it's transparent. But yeah, she just wanted Maury's attention. But he's like, yeah, I think these look nice. But he's like, yeah, what you wear all the time is really nice too. And she's just like, because she likes how, like, it's that kind of thing of like, yeah, it's really nice when you see people wear stuff that they really like and obviously are very comfortable in. And then, she completely forgot and ended up showing her back to him. But he says later on that he noticed it was being transparent because of the reflection of the light. He couldn't actually see anything. Who knows how true that was? But he wasn't bashful about it later on. I feel like if he really could see anything, he probably would still be freaking out about it. But there is a possibility, like I said, because there is that little interstitial that happens later where it's like, oh, they're kind of awkward around each other. That what might have been, even though that happened after episode 2, that might have been the one connected to episode 1 where it's like he probably did see a lot more than he let on. Or it could just be like, oh, just knowing it was transparent, even though I didn't see a lot, it's still embarrassing enough. But yeah, she puts on what she normally wears, and he's just like, oh my god, that's great. And he's kind of getting close to her, and she's like, oh my god, is he trying to kiss me? I mean, I love her mind being like, so like, ooh, romance bound, which is super adorable. But it turns out he's a kind of clothing nerd. He's like, oh my god, this is like, I can tell this is like by French design in like the 1920s. He's like, even this jacket I have is like from the 1940s. It's like, wow, would have never expected that to be like the thing. I was like, that kind of was not, like I said, was not expecting. I thought that was kind of a neat little, once again, the little intricacies of characters when you find out, like, oh, you're really big into that. That's kind of not what I expected your character to really be into. And so he's kind of a slight clothing nerd, a very niche, specific, vintage clothing nerd at that. But And Nico's just kind of upset because she's just like, okay, so that's all it was. I thought you were kind of like, really excited about what I'm wearing, which she kind of was. But she's just like, you don't even take notice of me. And he's like, she's like, I'm sure you'd rather just be here alone. He's like, that's not true. And she's like, yeah, because I'm sure like immediately me being here, it makes things really rowdy. And he's like, well, that part is true. But for him, it's like the rowdiness is nice because it's been him and his dad living here alone for so long. So like the rowdiness doesn't bother him. It's actually kind of a nice change of pace, every once in a while. But he also got excited because he's like, yeah, sorry I got super excited. It's just like, yeah, like it just meant that you and me have like a hobby that's kind of the same. So that's why he was just like, yeah, I kind of got super excited. Sorry about that. But it's kind of a nice thing that kind of connects both of them is this whole, hey, like kind of vintage clothing thing. I thought that was just kind of a nice, obviously cute thing. The next episode is Nico gets sent all her manga, which all the manga she lists are real manga. And I'm wondering, is that something like the writers for this anime are just big fans of that, or is that straight from the manga, meaning like, was it Kintara is the mangaka? Are they just, these might have been manga that he read growing up? Because even Mori jokes about like, oh, the reason why those boxes are so full is because those manga go for a very, very long time. And I looked it up. They do. Like, those are very, very long series. We're talking like at least one of them is 200 plus volumes and it's done. It ended like in 2016. Another one, I wanted what was it? Kochikame. That one is like 200 plus. But it ended in 2016. Well, I don't know if it ended or, if the mangaka sadly passed. Because I know the mangaka for Golo 13, I know he passed in like 2021. I looked that up. But like, I don't know if those are his assistants who worked underneath him who have been continuing it since his, passing. But I think that one was been going since like the late 60s. The other one she mentioned, I think, has been going since, maybe the 70s or 80s. I think the third one she mentioned is from the 80s. I want to say the Kochikame one might have been from the 70s, and Golo was from the 16. Go-Go, which is also interesting considering like Nico was like the Go-Go ones are her mom's manga. So it's kind of interesting knowing like because like that's kind of like a thriller assassin type of show. So knowing like, oh, that's what she's into, because the other two I believe are comedies. So those being the ones that Nico's into. Like I said, I don't know if that's just a reflection on them, like which watches mangaka, just like those are what he's into, or whether the people who are animating this and maybe the writers, like these are just some of their favorites or something like that. Could be both, whatever the case may be. It's also like, but once again, I was not expecting this series to be as referential. Like, these are a lot of like actual things getting thrown. I'm like, oh, if I, so you'd almost be like, oh, are these real things? And it's like, yeah. So they like I said, last episode was riddled with references, so it's kind of wild. But Mori also got a letter from Ibuki about, hey, like, take care of my daughter. I'm going to be in this village, which apparently this village that she's in is kind of like a safe haven for witches. It became one when witch hunters were around, which obviously implicates, like, well, there's definitely going to be big-time witch hunters going forward, I'd assume. But we'll have to wait to see. But I'm sure that's not something that died off. I'm sure that's going to be like a modern day, like they're a witch hunting, like kind of like the Templars and like Assassin's Creed or something, like, oh, they're still around to this day type of situation. I could definitely see that being like, because that might be kind of where our antagonists come from, whether it's other witches or warlocks. They haven't really talked about the warlock angle, but at the very least, like, other witches might be antagonists, but it's probably going to end up being witch hunters. We'll see. But I'm also curious if one of our main protagonists will end up being a witch hunter. Like, there might be someone who realizes, like, oh, witches aren't so bad and decides to join this squad or something. Like, we have two other main protagonists. We got introduced to one this episode, but there's still two more we don't know about. So there's always a possibility. And I always think that's interesting when you have enemies who become allies. I always like that type of storyline. So there's always room for that, but this could also just be like not that at all. But either way, we'll talk about that more when we get to when discussing the third part. But either way, she's basically trying to get Mori to, like, right, don't just do everything for her. If she kind of like steps out of line, kind of scold her. because Mori had a habit of when he was younger, like he would kind of do everything for Nico. So like he's kind of used to doing this stuff, like even at a young age. But he decided like no, like the fact is, you want help getting those manga in here, you do it yourself, and I will scold you. And then Nico's like, oh, he read Mom's letter, and once he did, he got swelled up with responsibility. So she did say, could you help? It's not like she was going to put it all on you, but he's also like going, because he is who he is, he would have done it all himself. But now because of Ibuki's letter, he's going to be like, no, you do it all yourself. And she tries to use magic, but he was like, don't do that, because that spell has a backlash of it, like drains you and makes you like super heavy hearted and like, make you heavy. And she was like, wow, you have an issue of girls being heavy? He's like, that's hurtful. He's like, you haven't even fully cast a spell and you're already heavy hearted right now. So her thought was, hey, I'm gonna make a copy of myself. But she doesn't copy herself, she basically splits herself and duplicates herself. But she halves herself every time. It isn't just her body, it's also her mind too. So every time she splits, she's splitting herself more and more. So each version of her is just like, because they always just equal one. So here's two, but they're half the size, and they pick up the box because not one of them can pick up the box by itself. So it takes two. And then Mori's like, it's defeating the purpose. What's the point of splitting up like this if basically at the end of the day you're still going to equal one? And so they're like, oh, we're going to need more help. So they split again, and now there's four of them. And he's like, you're still missing the point. He's like, if you could make a perfect copy of yourself, he's like, to be fair, that could end a lot of issues in the world. If you could just make perfect copies of like any issues that might be in the world. But it's like, you're not making a copy. You're just duplicating what's already there. And so they're doing the whole counting thing. Beep, beep. 1, 2, 1, 2, beep, beep. But then Mori's just like, fine, I'm gonna do this myself, and brings in the rest of the manga. And they're just like, oh my god, look at him, ogre, he's so strong, that's all awesome. And he's just like, Jesus, I'm like basically a preschool teacher right now. But he reads the rest of her note, and it turns out she left a sigil about the dog and Rain that it's like, whenever that disaster comes their way, this thing will disappear. So that way you'll know when the actual disaster comes and goes. I was like, oh, that's actually really neat. That's a neat plot device too. Or MacGuffin if you want to look at it. But just being able to have a clear thing of like, you're always going wondering what the real thing is. But at least when the thing is resolved, whatever the situation is, you're like, okay, let me look. Oh wait, the paper and the sigil's still here. Okay, so the threat's still out there. It's kind of sucky because you'll always be on guard because that's just Mori just being the person that he is. But obviously it's like, well, there was one of the Nikos got attacked by a dog. Luckily, Mori stepped in, and the guy, it's like, oh yeah, my dog got off the leash. I'm sorry about that. It's like, no, it's okay. I'm gonna let it slide this one time. But then he was like, but if it happens again, like, the mask is gonna come off, and he scares the guy and his dog. And luckily, Nico's okay, and eventually goes back to being together again as one Nico. So. And then the third episode, as I was kind of talking about Mori being very like hyper focused on. I mean, granted, he cares about Nico, and it's not just an obligation. It's also because he cares about her and he doesn't want her to get hurt. So he's obviously going to be focused on like, okay, she just wanted to go out on her own, but it's raining. So he's like, no, got to be with you in case there's anything that does happen. I need to be there immediately to protect her. And obviously, she's talking about this anime that she likes, but he's kind of ignoring her, which I thought that would have been a bigger issue in the thing. But it's like, no, which obviously she's pouting a little bit, but he's like, hey, get under the same umbrella as me. And then she's like, oh my god, I can't believe Mori made such a like big swing, big move like that. And obviously she's so excited to the point Kara shows up and was like, oh my god, like we should go hang out. And she's like, sorry, I can't. And it's just like, yeah, because she's just enjoying this too much. But along the way, they don't go directly home. So he picks up that they're being followed, and he confronts the person that follows them. It's someone in a dog mask, which I'm like, hey, raining, dog, okay, something's going on here. So he fights the person a little bit. But obviously, Mori wasn't going all out in the fight. We haven't really seen him go really all out. He, leashes his power a little bit, but never like to the full extent. So it's just more like as we find out, it's a test. And the person we were seeing, because I would assume this is the same person that was outside their place at the end of the second part in the like raincoat and stuff. Could be. That could be a completely different person. You can't really tell because that face was covered at the time, but it most likely probably was him. But we get introduced to a slight introduction to Can. It's not a proper introduction. I mean, it is, but I'm sure we're going to get even more of one next episode. But Can is a Tengu, and I thought it was interesting because like the staff he pulled out was very specific, and that's why I was like, oh, are you also a magic user? But it's like to some extent because he controls wind. Obviously, when my immediate thought when I think of Tengu is it's kind of like, well, I've seen some depictions of them, but obviously I also think of like kind of them in like the Shimigami Tensei / Persona like games like that's immediately where my mind goes when I think about Tengus. But like I said, they have a very specific aesthetic and stuff. But obviously he's her crow familiar. So I'm like, okay, so if you're a crow, so what does that make the other two? I wonder if one of them is going to be like a dog or something. Because like I said, there's two other characters. That's why I was like, okay, could, like I said, could it be like, hey, one of you's a witch hunter to turn good guy? Maybe not. But that would assume like makes me go like, oh, so the other two are familiars as well. I'm so curious because Can is from the place that Nico was training at, where her mom currently is still training. So I wonder if the other two come about that situation as well, because I'm sure they sent backup because of the whole like, right, whatever's coming, Mori's going to need help to do it. So yeah. But this kind of gives some insight to the other two potentially being familiars as well. We just don't know what creatures they are. I mean, once again, I'm sure it's there in the intro and I wasn't paying as much attention. I'll try and take more note of it next episode. But I'm sure also anyone that's read the manga knows what they are already. I can't remember if it was episode 1 or episode 2 I had referenced. I wondered, like, would it ever get to the point where Mori felt inadequate as a protector? And now that Can has showed up, I wonder, is it going to be a situation of he kind of outshines Mori and he kind of starts wondering, like, am I really a good fit to take care of Nico? Maybe Can will make him start feeling inferior, like, oh, you can't do a good enough job to protect Nico. Because, like, right, like Nico and Mori haven't seen each other in years since they were kids. At least Can was around her when she was training, so I get the feeling he'll probably be maybe a little inept at his job. Maybe not. Maybe he'll actually be really good at it. I don't know. I don't know if I'm wondering if they're going to create a situation where like he also likes Nico, but Nico obviously only has feelings for Mori, but Mori's kind of completely oblivious to all of that. So I don't know. We'll see how they structure that. But like I said, I'd wondered about the whole. I just can't remember which episode I had thrown that up there as like a potential future storyline of hey, him feeling like he doesn't do a good enough job protecting Nico and like that someone else would be a better fit. I mean, that story that might not happen now. That, like I said, it could be like a low point in the story for Mori's character arc of just like him feeling inaccurate. Like I said, it could come up now or it could be coming up later on when things kind of get really, really crazy and serious. So, but also like, was I tripping or did like it's a fake episode title because the real episode title was there, but like did Mori say like, oh, the next episode, the death of Joey Wheeler, and Can's like, who is that? Because the entire time it's like, oh, who's this character that showed up? And Nico's like, Can, and Mori's just like, we still don't know who he is, and she's like, it's Can, this mysterious character. She's like, it's Can. But yeah, I was like, once again, it's just like reference after reference. Freaking Joey, the death of Joey Wheeler. Jeez, don't do that to my boy Joey. I wonder if that just kind of implying like Can has a very Joey Wheeler personality. The reason why they use Joey is a very specific reference, but once again, references of the wazoo. So, but yeah, just another fun, cute episode. Some interesting developments. I'm excited to see where everything takes us going forward into the next episode. Like I said, it'll probably be like a proper introduction to Can and his relationship with Nico, and just kind of like give you probably a little backstory to his whole circumstances, but also like how he got chosen, why he ended up here. We'll probably get some of, if not a lot of that next episode. So, but really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.